Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support.
The Dice Tower, episode 685.
Hybrid games!
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, I'm still unpacking from the move and recording this in a makeshift fort out of Auralex foam. So Tom has a special guest to help him answer some questions from the mailbag. Plus, Geoff has pigeons on the brain, and the show concludes with a top 10 list of hybrid games. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the great sphinx of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. So today's show is completely different. Actually, it's not completely different. It's pretty much the same thing, except I have finally freed myself from the tyranny of Eric Michael Summerer. Actually, Eric is moving. Can you believe that? Moving? This is a bad time. It's a bad time of year to move, and it's a bad year to move.
Brave man.
Although I was talking to a realtor friend of mine, Blake, he lives in Georgia, and he told me that just as many, if not more people are moving these days.
Honestly, I do see this kind of like pack my bags, mindset, like, hey, just change it up. But I'm also seeing this more comical thing in my mind where you just have the stick with the bag like you used to see on like old cartoons. But now in my comical now I've added kids to that image with their little bags and the sticks. I guess that's what he's doing.
Well, before we beat up on Eric too much, the other voice you're hearing right now is Jeremy Howard, also known as Jambalaya, from all sorts of places. You see him on Man vs. Meeple and talking about board games on Facebook, and he claims to play even more games than I do.
Oh my gosh. I cannot say that for sure because I do consume a lot of games, but I don't think I play as many games as you at all anymore. Not anymore. I slowed down.
My goal is to still have the contest of, if I have one record, I think I play more bad games than anyone else.
You play more bad games than, you definitely play more bad games. And I love you for that, by the way. I love you for that.
You know what? It doesn't really bother me.
I want to compliment you. I want to say I say a lot of good things about you. I can't even come up with the names, but the review that you did for that 3-pack of games.
Oh, the ketchup.
By the way, best opener ever. Like, these games are bad. Like, these games shouldn't exist. Best opener ever, Tom.
Well, it's one of those times where I said, don't watch the review. Yeah. Knowing full well everyone would then immediately watch it. But what do you do? I watched
all of it. I watched every second. I was like, this is beautiful. What are you doing? They were so bad. That was not like even a before you close out the day. It was just like, this is the truth. Like, these games are bad.
Yeah. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there is a trio of games. They look exactly like a box of macaroni and cheese, Kraft mac and cheese, Heinz ketchup, and Jell-O. And I rank the Jell-O a 3 out of 10. The Heinz is a 2 out of 10. And the Mac is a 1 out of 10 because I cannot give a lower score.
Yeah. You have to register that they did make a game, so you have to put a 1 on it. Did make a game.
It's a bummer because they look so cool, and people are going to buy them.
That's a move, though. I don't like when people make games like that. That's a weird move. Like, how do you ship that and think and know that you're going to make good return on sales? I don't know, but they did it. It's real.
Like I said, Eric is moving right now. He's moving to a new house in Connecticut somewhere. And I've been following his trail of woe on Facebook, packing everything in a giant container. He has too many games and dismantling the sound booth and putting it back together. It's one thing to dismantle these things, to set them back up again. All those wires.
Tom, I just got my floor redone. So right before I went to Essen at Jeremy's house in Indy, I had to move my entire basement into the other side of my basement. And fortunately, that was great because I didn't have to take all my board games out of the basement upstairs or somewhere. But, you get your floor done. I got like 5 calyxes and four calyxes, and I had to like just figure that out, plus games on the floor. And, I got it all back. I got back. Floor's done. There's nothing in the room, and I had to put it back up. That was really challenging.
I do like putting games back on the shelves because it's like a new start to me. I'm like, ooh.
I thought I would. And boy, I actually haven't completed that project, by the way. I got one part of it done, major chunk done, the stuff behind me. But other than that, it's a project, much like getting my floor done.
Well, I'm looking at the stuff behind you, folks. You can't see it, but it's basically just all stuff from this year, mostly.
Yeah. So the stuff that I have back here are my all-timer games, but in front of them is more so like the new hotness stuff. So they're blocked by the new hotness stuff. But I got to the point where when I did put my games back, I would only the ones that are behind me would be the new hotness and stuff. But that in this calyx are the ones that are like my favorite games ever. I'm not getting rid of them. Those are my games. Like Root is back here, like Anachrony's back here, all my Lacerda's back here, those types of things like that. So they're not going anywhere. Robinson Crusoe, Dawn of the Zeds, New York Slice, these types of games. Aeon Zen, Gentis.
Man, you're like just spoiling all your favorite games right now.
No, these are not. I didn't even give them all that were on the list. I didn't actually mention one that's on the list today.
Well, it's interesting because we are so close to the end of 2020 now, and it's about time for that top games of the year. So that's like right now I'm frantically going through all the games that I have on my shelves saying, I need to play anything that might get in the top 10.
Yeah. What I'm doing, and, there's games arriving all the time and you're trying to play them. I have to play some of these that are like, I feel like in my top 5 one more time. Just one more time, just to make sure. Like, because some of the games that you may have played at the beginning of the year and you like hold them in such a high regard, and and then you have the recency sometimes of like, hey, this game was great and I just played it last month, and you got to kind of like just maybe one more time go back to it just to see what's up. But the other part is that I know there's just some monsters that are finally coming at the end of the year, and I knew they were going to be great, like Dwellings of Eldervale. Like, I know how great it is because I played the prototype, like, well past the campaign. So,
have you got yours yet?
I haven't got mine yet, and that's the hardest part.
Well, then I'm feeling better because I hadn't got mine yet either, and I was feeling lonely looking on Facebook with all these people playing it.
I know.
All right. Well, let's jump into some games that we have played.
All right. So my first game is Whistle Mountain. This is designed by Luke Laurie and Scott Caputo. If you don't know Scott Caputo, I call him the tile laying god, the god of tile laying. He is the goat of tile laying. He's done several games like Whistle Mountain. Whistle Stop would be the one you may know him for. He also made this recent game called 100 Tory and another game, Sorcerer City. So he's kind of on a run with all these things that are tile laying and this kind of engine building within that. And then it's also Luke Laurie, designer of Manhattan Project and Incan Empire, Dwellings of Eldervale, which is getting insane buzz, and then now this one. So they've combined. In this game, you're just basically building your way up to the top of this mountain. And at the bottom are your workers. And your workers are, well, they're a combination of hanging out and also drowning. Okay,
yeah, so that's true. They're not very good at this,
which is very interesting in the setup. You're like, why are these people drowning? so the idea is you're trying to build scaffolding all the way up this mountain that's kind of set in it's kind of square triangle-ish at the same time, and then you are placing the scaffolding, and you're taking from your player area these balloons. They're different size balloons, and you're either placing them adjacent to the scaffolding that will give you resources, or you're placing them on the sides to get certain machine parts and whistles and more scaffolding and cards and things like that. But along the way, you're going to get these these buildings and machines, and the machines will give you a little bit of an engine so that you can do different, have a different abilities and break rules. But then you also have these buildings that you're going to be placing there on top of the scaffolding so that you can place your blimps, I guess I should say, blimps and balloons next to them, and you can trigger those things as well. Like you can trigger machines as you lay it on top of it. The interesting part about this game is it's kind of like you're forced to play bad Tetris strategically, and because you're trying to make sure that people don't score as much, grab as many resources as you do. So you're trying to pounce on the gaps that are happening in the game. Like you're trying to find ways for you to put your stuff and time it so everybody doesn't pull their stuff back off. I don't know if you play at Energy Empire or like Manhattan Project games. It's kind of like that thing where you're placing workers. You're trying to keep your workers out longer so you don't have to pull them all back.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's like this thing with that, trying to time that out. And then there's also this thing of you have these little guys that you're trying to save. And what happens is as you build buildings, machines or whatever they're called, higher and higher above a certain point, the water actually rises. And if your guys that are on the side are not above the water or saved, they go into the water and you can lose points. But you can save these guys and move them off to the side by placing I want to say buildings on top of them. Because when you save them, you put them on top of the scaffolding in certain spots. And you can put your buildings on top of them, and then they slide over to the right side, and you score points or you get resources as you go higher and higher. It's a really rewarding game. The best way to explain it is that it looks chaotic. It's fiddly. It's not super fiddly because it looks really like when you start placing all this stuff out here and the way things are kind of put together, it looks like a mess. It's a beautiful mess. It's not as fiddly as you would think it is. And it all works. I played this on TTS for the first time. I played it and I was like, how is this going to work? And Bezier does such a great job with the components and making it, everything's thick, everything's high quality. This game could be my game of the year. It is that good. It's pleasing every time I play. There's so many different abilities that you can get in this game. There's so many different abilities. It does not work out the same. Everybody's getting what they want. Eventually the game forces you to move forward and say, hey, you can't just spam that building over and over again that gives you double coals and whatever. You have to move on because people can ramp up the end game, all kinds of stuff. That game is really, really pleasing to play. I love games like that give me so much positive feedback. Every time I do something, Whistle Mountain could be my game of the year.
Now, see, I'll tell you, right there is one of the problems, though. I don't disagree with you. It is a fantastic game,
yeah.
But you just said Whistle Stop, and I think that's a problem that they called it Whistle Mountain. It should have had just a completely different name. It has nothing to do with Whistle Stop.
I know it's Whistle Mountain. I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. No,
I know what you're saying, though.
I'm not writing down mistakes Jeremy makes in my show.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I wish they had not made it. I thought when I got it in the mail, I almost stuck it on the shelf for a while because I thought it was just another expansion for Whistle Mountain. Whistle Stop. Now I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And I like Whistle Stop, but I love Whistle Mountain. Wow, Whistle Mountain is basically you make your own worker placement spaces.
Yep.
That's just awesome.
Yep. This is where it really does get good for everybody. So everybody's feeling like, oh, I'm getting something, even if you get less. Is those I want to say machines or buildings. So the ones that you put out there, the ones that you buy on the side. As soon as you put them on there, you can kind of strategically put your guys under those spots where you think somebody's going to be putting one of the buildings, so that everybody moves over. So that's a thing. Then once it's on there, now everybody's going to be like, "Ooh, I want that to happen on my turn too." So then everybody's kind of spamming the new building. Hey, I want to put it here. I want to put it there. I want my scaffolding there. And then the water rises, and it's like, "Oh, that's over. All right, let's put a new one out there." So people are kind of enjoying the benefit of having something new out there, but they can't get distracted because the game's moving along.
Right.
And I mean, every piece of scaffolding you place, you get points just for touching. So now you're not playing bad Tetris. You're trying to play the best Tetris possible. So I don't know. Yeah.
It's going to be hard to move up from this. I'm not going to try. I'm going to talk about a good game, not quite as good as Whistle Mountain. This game is called Paris because they are starting to circle around and use city names they've already used before when naming games. This is designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. That's like a classic combination. And these guys put to shame, in my opinion, the Vitel Lacerdas in the world. And I know I'm not saying Vitel Lacerda is a bad designer. Don't get mad at me.
I'm my blood pressure.
No, what I'm saying is these guys show that you can sometimes make a really good game that's also simple and has a few mechanisms, but offers a lot of interesting ideas.
Can I give you an instant feedback on what you just said? Okay, you trigger me first of all. This is what I'm saying.
Glad
this is what I'm saying, Tom. This is what I'm saying. Every game, Lacerda game, has like 5 actions. It's not hard to learn. It's the 17 other executive actions that you really have to pinpoint down, okay? It's the 17 other ones. I'm not saying you should just know the first 5.
Maybe I shouldn't say Lacerda. Maybe I should have said Splatter. But anyhow.
No, I'm just saying, but like that's the joke with me with Lacerda. It's like there's only 4 actions in the game. It's the 17 executive actions that you have to know. So yeah, it's a Lacerda joke. So there you go.
So in Paris, you're building Paris. You're real estate agents, and who cares? The theme doesn't matter. What you do, the first chunk of the game, you're flipping over tiles and placing them around in Paris. It's almost like a choir in other games where you'll flip a tile over and, hey, I'm putting out an 8 in this neighborhood and a 3 in this neighborhood. Then you are slowly placing these tokens on the board on these buildings. It costs money to enter a building. So if I go into a 1 building in a neighborhood, that will cost me 1 coin. I can then later on jump from that 1 building to a 6 building, and that will cost me 5 because that's the difference between 1 and 6. At the end of the game, I can get points for having the most control in neighborhoods. So I want to, move up and be in these bigger buildings. You run out of money at some point over the course of the game, so you really have to think about how much you're spending. But also, every time you go in a 1 and a 2 building, they're the most boring of buildings, but they let you move on this bonus track. And this bonus track has tons of bonus tiles, and you can pick one of these bonus tiles and keep it. You can move as far as you want on this bonus track, but you can never go back. So that's one of my favorite mechanisms in a game. And so I really like it. It's a pretty little game about building Paris, and it has almost like an acquire feel as you flip over these buildings, and you are there's a little bit of area control, and then there's when's the right time to do these bonuses, and also when's the right time to run the end of the game out, because you are going to run out of money at some point. And I find I was very happy with this game. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be a classic, but the Kramer-Kiesling combo, those guys are they're going to go down in history as some of the greatest board game designers ever. They're already there.
They are. I find their games to be pretty good. How did you feel about the Heaven and Ale?
It's a good game with a theme that's almost more boring. It almost drags the game down a little bit. But I love that concept. It's that idea Heaven and Ale has where you can move as far as you want.
Right.
I don't think that's Kramer and Kiesling. I think that's just Kiesling.
Is it? Okay.
I will look it up because I'll definitely be told about it. But yeah, I think the combination of these guys is pretty amazing. And they did Tikal back in the day. And Heaven and Ale was Michael Kiesling and Andreas Schmidt. Oh, there you go. But I mean, Kiesling by himself has done Azul, which I think people have heard of. And Wolfgang Kramer has done El Grande, which I will smack anyone who says anything bad about that game. I won't.
Like that open threat, Tom.
Yeah, I know. All right, what do you got next?
I have Tawantin Suyu, the Incan Empire, designed by one of my favorite designers, David Turczi, solo creator, makes a lot of solo games. He's got a good run of games now that are coming with his name only on them, and they're not solo only. Tawantin Suyu is a game about corn, potatoes, high priests, and weavings.
Yeah, kind of.
You played it, right?
I did. And it's about those things in theory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this game, in this game, you have you have these high priests, and you kind of have these boards, this big board that's shaped like a pentagon inside of the regular board, and they have a whole bunch of these little spots. They're kind of connected by these roads, small little roads that connect to letters and then actions. And there's going to be actions on all sides of these letters. What you're doing is you play cards from your hand or gold to place a worker there, worker at one of the spots that matches that letter. Now, all the workers have all different abilities. They have all of them have all different abilities. Some of them give you extra actions by all of them give you extra actions by matching the colors. They all have different things that they do by placing them first, maybe. There's ones that take others by being placed next to others, all different kinds of stuff like that. But the most important part are the actions that you're adjacent to. So there's maybe one to your left, one to your right, and then one above you, like kind of where you are. And the 3 levels that are on there also matter because you have to pay a certain amount to take the actions based on how far you are away from the site of the priest, where the priest is on the board. So it's like a real big, like field of vision type thing, looking all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom. So you have to do this little penalty thing. And you take these different actions, and you're doing kind of a lot of different things in this game. You're going to be building weavings, which is like a pattern kind of creating thing. You're going to be building these statues as well. And you're really just turning in resources to create these different kind of things that are going to go on. And then you're also trying to create these cards, which is kind of like you're gathering these cards as a resource for war, which is another part of the game where you're going to be sacrificing these cards or flipping them over in order to buy different things around the boards. There's 4 different spots where you can go into, and you can spend your war cards as a resource to gain other benefits in there, and you get bonuses for that. You can build these little buildings that kind of help you build your own little, player area so you can get specific resources. And then there's this little part in the middle where you have your high priest, and your high priest moves around this mini pentagon, and they take different actions that are, just kind of bigger, better actions. And I'm blanking on what all of them are, which is not necessarily that important. But there is a festival where you kind of trigger and score off of all this stuff and move up a path that gives you points and other resources. That's that in a nutshell. What you need to know about this game is the first play of it is going to be super long. Okay, what you need to know is you need to buckle up. Okay, you need to go get a snack and buckle up. All right. The first play of this game is going to clock in at 2 to 3 hours. And you're going to have people who have AP that could expend it to 3.5 hours. Now, I want to be very clear. It's because the way the board's built.
Amen.
And the strategy, it's confusing at first just by looking at it. Even if you knew all the rules, just looking at it and the board game state, if someone changes it just a little bit for you, all of a sudden you have a letter card, and that person placed that on that letter, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have the right amount of beans, I have the right amount of this, and then they place on there, and you're like, okay, I lost my spot on the board. Where do I go? Where do I go now? So there's a thing to that, and how you're going to pay for penalties and stuff like that, and then you got to worry about stairs because you don't want people to get points off of you. Then you want to create stairs, but then you don't want to drive everybody away from you so you can benefit from the stairs. There's all these little things that distract you so much you don't necessarily know what strategy you're building. But when I've played it several times afterwards, the time cuts down a lot, and the strategy gets better and better. Now, I hate to compare games that come from the same publisher in the same year.
Do it.
But Border and Dice is doing it to them because these games are both really good. So this one here is not as good as Tekken, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is not a good game. And you can own both because they're totally different games. I just don't like.
You can own both of anything.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I'm not even sure it's close.
No, it's not even close. It's not even close at all.
So I'm calling this the T series.
Yes.
We have Teotihuacan, Zulkan, Tekkenu.
Tom, don't you ever say that again. Oh my gosh. Teotihuacan. What is that?
You know what? I'll say it any way I want to say it because Eric's not here to correct me.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I don't live there.
I'm sorry.
Trismegistus and then now this one. I haven't made a final opinion on this one yet, so I still want to give it some more whirling. I really hate the board. It is a mishmash of symbols. The sections aren't clearly defined.
They sure aren't. I totally agree with that.
I don't want to have to sit and think about what the board looks like. I want to be able to think, what action am I going to take next? So the way the game works, I'm like, I'll take this action. Now I'm going to look at the board and find where that action is. Oh, it's in these 7 different spots. Yeah. Okay, which ones can I get to? 4 of them. All right, which of those 4? What color am I going to use? It's like, so much work.
Right.
Now, the military part of the game is fun, but it has limited returns as the game goes by.
Correct. Definitely.
And I found that that's more exciting at the beginning than it is at the end. And I thought that was unfortunate.
It's a place to go. That's another thing. It's a place to go, and you start seeing people get advantages from it, and you're like, I'm not going to allow them to do that. So that becomes part of this middle part of the game that everybody goes so hard on that, and then it's very anticlimactic.
But I think my biggest problem with the game is you can see the gears grinding in all these games. Yeah. Nobody is saying any of the T games are superbly thematic. They're not. I guess Tekkenu is probably the most thematic with the shadow stuff, but even that, it's still. But this one, by far, I don't even know what I was doing thematic wise. Like I'm building something, I'm running down the stairs that someone else built. But I put a blue worker on a blue spot. Now I get something extra bonus, whatever. Who cares? Just was very mechanical. And I think of the T series, it seems to be the weakest. And I like Tertzi's stuff, but
I think I'm in agreement with you, but it's still a very good series of games.
Oh, it is. So, it's one of the best series of games that exists.
Yeah, like that's. I want to make that be known. Like, this is a really good series of games. So if this is at the bottom of it, man, you can do worse.
Sure.
But I'm in agreement with you in a way. Like I gotta play it. I'm gonna play it one more time. But I think I've found what's going on with it as I've played more, and I still come away with it's still a new kind of confusing every time I play. Like, I just feel like, gosh, there's almost too much to consider because all the workers do different types of things. But like I said, if it's before your turn and somebody plays on the G, placement spot, and you were thinking like, oh man, I was just going to place there. Now you got to like reevaluate the whole board game state right when it's your turn.
I guess that didn't happen to me so much because there's so many spots to put things.
Yeah. You had all the resources in the world. Look at you.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's so many spots to put things that somebody and me doing the same thing doesn't happen very often. They're just doing something different. I don't have all the resources in the world. There's never enough potatoes. No, there's not potatoes. There's not enough corn in the game.
There's not potatoes in the game. I told you.
if I learned anything this game is that corn is better than potatoes. But in real life, I know that's not true. Potatoes are amazing, and you should have them with every meal. It's healthy. Okay, moving on. All right. Let's talk about Almanac. Actually, I don't believe that's the full name of this. It's a series of games, supposedly, from Colossal. Almanac, the Dragon Road. It didn't, blow the doors off a Kickstarter, so I'm not...
Tough one, man. Tough one. I remember when this game hit Kickstarter, and I was like really excited about it. And it, from what I remember, it just barely crossed the finish line. So
yeah, it got $31,000, which isn't bad. But so I finally got the game, and I really enjoy it. I have to say that I have a record of, I think I'm at 60 to 70% on Carl Chuddick games. And definitely talking about a man who doesn't have a ton of theme, but Almanac just tickles me because it takes place in a book. The book has 17 pages or double spreads of pages. And on each page, you're going to be placing workers. You place workers like a typical thing. You're getting resources, selling those resources, completing contracts, pretty basic stuff. But when it's over, you have a quick bidding auction round, and whoever wins that is going to pick the next page you turn to. So from page 1, you go to 2 or 3. Then on page 2, you'll go to 4 or 5. And from 3, you'll go to 6 and 7. And each page also has different rules. Like one page will say you can only place workers, 1 worker per column. Another page gives you the cross sections of the workers that you play. And so that gives it a lot of life, a lot of follow-up that you can do. You can do, each page feels different. So you play through 6 different pages over the course of the game. So games are going to be different, and the rules are slightly different over these 6 pages.
Okay.
It's simple. I think there's a lot of, it's really pretty, not the cover. Cover's not very interesting at all, actually. But the game itself is pretty, and it offers a lot of interesting, fun things. There's a little fantasy universe there that is sort of there.
Yeah, I'm looking at this one page. It's page 10. It looks like Chutes and Ladders. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? And I mean, part of it is I've been playing this with my kids because it's colorful enough that it attracts them, and they're turning into better Eurogamers. I'm pretty sure in our last game, the scores were, it was like 250 to 230, and then somebody got 140.
Oh, wow.
And then the kids were like, ha, Dad, you're not very good at games.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shut up. I review them and make money. What do you do?
Right. You got to pull the dad move on.
But I think it's just interesting. I like that there's something different per page. And so that keeps the game from getting stale. And like I said, they said it's a series of games. We'll see. But don't worry about that. This one here, if you like lighter worker placement games, but that have some variety in them, I think this one will please you like it does me.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to check this one out. And then I kind of let it, it died off for me because I think it kept getting pushed back. And I don't know, for what you said, and I'm looking at it again, like the final product. I'm like, this is not that it's just cute. I'm not fooled by cute anymore. But I'm still interested in the design now that I see it.
It almost looks like a Ryan Lockett game, actually.
It does. From
Definitely Red Raven Games. It has that same kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Colossal is an interesting company because they don't have a consistent look to their games at all.
No, they don't.
Their games are so different, from this to Mezzo to Western Legends.
Yeah. They have a roster of games.
Yeah, so I can't say, it looks like a typical Colossal game. It just doesn't.
Right,
but
no typical Colossal game.
But I do think it's pretty neat, and so check it out. That's Almanac, The Dragon Road. All right, well, that's it for gameplay. We still got more of this episode to go through, but before we continue talking, we're going to let Geoff talk about pigeons.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Last week, a pigeon sold for $1.9 million. The pigeon, named New Kim, is a racing bird. Now, the sport of racing homing pigeons goes back to the 1800s. The competing birds are kept in the same loft for many months and then get taken away about 400 miles and released. The first pigeon to make it back to the loft is the winner. New Kim went up for auction last week because the breeder who raised her was closing up, coop, I guess. Belgium has long been the home of the best pigeon breeders, and one of the best was retiring at age 76, and all 445 of his pigeons went up for sale. Now, pigeon racing has been in decline over the last few decades, but recently it has been making a comeback in China, where it's becoming increasingly popular. Now, apparently some in China have a lot of money on their hands to spend on hobbies, and the auction for all of these birds has been shattering records, with one pigeon, Armando, setting a short-lived record at $1.5 million before New Kim sold for $1.9 million. And both Armando and New Kim were purchased by the same person, planning to breed them, I assume, and start their own coop. Still, $3 million for two pigeons seems like an awful lot. Now, this story caught my eye for three reasons. First, I am endlessly fascinated by the games that people invent. It seems like something we're just hardwired to do, to put constraints and structure around unstructured activities. Walking down the street, we avoid stepping on cracks, seeing how many traffic lights we can make without hitting a red light, or whatever. We're always inventing games. And some of these catch on and become organized activities with societies and tournaments and more. When I was growing up, we used to watch ABC's Wide World of Sports, and I loved seeing the offbeat sports they would sometimes feature, like lumberjack competitions. And of course, as a spectator, I was instantly an expert on the tragic mistakes the competitors were making in the log rolling competition. That's just bad form, I can tell. Now, a new series just premiered on Netflix called We Are the Champions, which each week highlights one of these offbeat sports, ranging from cheese rolling to dog dancing. And while I haven't seen it, my understanding is that they both poke fun at these activities, but also respect the seriousness and sincerity that competitors bring. A really interesting case study of how an activity got turned into a sport is the world of Rubik's Cube competitions. A group specifically set out to create a global organization with sanctioned events and consistent rules. And at GDC, the Game Developers Conference, a few years back, I attended a presentation from one of the founders about the process of setting up and growing the league, and it was fascinating. I'll leave a link on the show notes so you can view it on YouTube if you're interested. I also highly, highly recommend the short documentary, The Speed Cubers, on Netflix, which is an absolutely fantastic look at this subculture and, more importantly, the people that are involved in it. Now, the second thing that I loved learning about pigeon racing is that it underscored how all human activities end up being fundamentally the same. As pigeon racing increased in popularity in China, with prize pools growing, there was, of course, a huge cheating scandal back in 2018. A pigeon breeder secretly taught some of his birds not to fly back to the common coop, but to a special separate location, which was much closer to the release point. When his birds came back there, he put them in a case and smuggled them onto a bullet train, dashing back to Shanghai at 200 miles per hour, and then releasing them very close to the finish. Side fact, pigeons can actually fly 100 miles per hour for short bursts and maintain about 80 miles per hour for long stretches. So you can't even cheat by driving in a car, certainly not around Shanghai. Only high-speed rail made this particular scam possible. Anyway, the cheater was caught out because, of course, he released his birds too soon, and what is normally an 8-hour journey took only 4 hours. Way, way too quickly. So yeah, people are people regardless of what they're doing. Lastly, it made me realize yet again that while we bemoan the prices of some of the newer game titles that come out, in the grand scheme of things, being a board game hobbyist is not actually that expensive compared to golf or collecting cars or motorcycles or scuba diving or a zillion other things. But if someone out there wants to give me $1.9 million for this incredibly rare board game that I've got here, please let me know. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Hey folks, today's show is brought to you by The Op. Also used as known as USAopoly. And today we want to talk a little bit about their featured game, Hues and Cues. Actually, you can watch me play this online if you want with people. Hues and Cues is a game that my whole family really enjoyed playing. It's a big board that's just full of just a color swaths, all these different colors. And you are trying to connect colors to words. You're going to get a color on a card, and then I might say the word apple, or I might say the word, sunny, and everyone's going to try to pick that color or get close to that color on the board. There's hundreds of color squares, and when I say
480 colors to be exact.
what? That is a lot of colors. So green or red, probably red is for apple, but what if I had just eaten a green apple this morning? Either way, it's a lot of fun, and you're using 1 or 2 word cues and trying to get people to guess, but you can also get close to the answer and get points. And so it's a lot of fun as everyone will sit there and argue over what color you should have actually said, and it holds a whole pile of people. Very much recommend it. Hues and Cues.
Looking for a game that's perfect for your small Thanksgiving gathering? The Op has a game for any type of gamer in your life. So many great games and puzzles. Get Hues and Cues and many more at theop.games or at your favorite game retailer. Questions.
All right, question time. First of all, Robert asks, he was talking about the Brothers Murph. We're talking about people getting Kickstarter regret. All that cool stuff that you see in a Kickstarter. It looks good. And then, you wait forever. And finally, the game is shipping and you've like, what? Why did I even back it? I was just thinking this because I saw all the boxes for Bloodborne, the board game.
Yeah.
From Come On, and I was like, huh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's going to be a lot of work when that one comes in.
Yep.
And so this person talks about that and how they backed some games and it's been a long time. Other games have come in between. But personally, do you ever get regret when you look at a Kickstarter that's coming and you're like, man, I wish I hadn't backed it?
I just did that. I just got it.
Really?
I just got it. I've had, and this is the first time in a while, actually. It's not because I don't like it. I just kind of moved on mentally. So I really laid backed, Ultra Quest. I saw this in a post about Tidal Blades, and people were talking about, like, why are people selling Tidal Blades, which is a good game. I explained to people, I'm like, people move on. They're tempted by other Kickstarters. We're at a time of the year where people have they've already bought into so many Kickstarters. And this is like the time where they deliver. And this is also the time where big Kickstarters come out. And I'm like, if you've been gone for 2 years, it's like, baby, I've moved on. The tide's changed. Things are different now, baby. You got to go. And for me, even when I got this game, I'd like mentally, I took the wrapping off. This is what crazy. This would have been crazy to watch. I usually take the wrapping off when I get a game. I just like taking the wrapping off, and then that night I'll organize it. Within the first 2 days, I usually do this. This game, I waited a couple days to even open the box. I got the box out. I know this is insane. My wife's like, really? You just left that box there, that big box? And I open it. I look at it. I'm like, oh, this is Ultra Quest. I take off the wrapping. I open the box. Grab the booklet, because I usually just read the booklet first right away. I grab the booklet. I put the booklet back in the box, put the top back on the box, and I said I'm going to sell it.
Whew. This does not necessarily mean that this is a bad game, folks.
No, now I want to say this. There is nothing, I'm sure there's nothing wrong with Ultra Quest. But Ultra Quest got met with some other game that I believe is a lot better. It is called Etherfields. And it's because other games deliver as well that you move on. Like, you just move on. And then you start to second guess yourself. Like, I love the Saddler Brothers, but I think I've played enough of the MDS system. Like, you start making up excuses as to why you don't like something, or you start like invalidating like things you actually like. You're like, well, I don't see the longevity, or maybe this is too much content, but then I'm buying Etherfields. Like, like you just start not making sense. Yes, you try to find ways.
Picked a very short game there.
Yeah, try to make it up. Like, I like longer campaigns. Like, just so yeah. It was hard, and I figured I had to get it out of my house. I just had to get it out of my mind. Maybe I'll regret it later. I don't know. I don't think so. Well,
this happens to me sometimes with the extra stuff.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you what. I don't think I've ever regretted a playmat.
No.
Okay.
No.
I almost always regret not getting the playmat, but I'll sit there and they'll have the pledge, the deluxe pledge.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can upgrade. And then they have the add in an expansion, or you can add in 64 expansions for the price of 2. Yeah. And I'm like, well, why not? That seems like a good deal. And then you get it all, and you're like, I wish I just got the base game to see if I liked it at first.
Another stack. Yay. You know, like, I don't take those photos. I don't take those photos, whatever those photos are, where people have them stacked in different types of stacks. Like, I get it. You spent $300-$400. I get it. You should be excited. It's just that, like, I'm done with those kind of excited pictures for myself. Like, there's just several of them. I have Monumental, Reich Busters, Rambo got sent to me, Post-Human, then I got all Village Attacks, Endure the Stars, Hex.
You're going to be able to build a house.
Like all these. After a while, like I have a calyx full of these boxes. And like, even when you strip them down, there's still Arena of the Contest. Like these were like 6-8 boxes. It's like, it just, we could have a discussion about that all day. Like the amount of content, like who's playing on what I call lifestyle games at this point. Like what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? But
all right,
another question for another day.
We're gonna go to the next question. We're gonna feel bad soon.
Jeez, Tom. All right, this is from Steve. He says, my wife and I mostly play 2-player games. While we enjoy asymmetric games, we stayed away from one versus many games since they always require more than 2. Makes sense, right? However, we did recently play the new Infinity Gauntlet Love Letter game. That's a one versus many game that still works with 2 players. Are there other notable examples of games that are one versus many that still play well at just 2?
No.
The answer is no.
No, I don't. Maybe there is, but I thought about this for a while. I thought, all the deduction games, Scotland Yard, Fury of Dracula. Nope, those are better with more.
And I was like, maybe Not Alone, but I don't think Not Alone plays at 2.
Actually, Not Alone is probably better at 2 because it's horrible at 4.
Yeah, it's terrible at 4. It's a really good game, though. Maybe that may be your shot. And the cool part about that one is like the cost. If you felt like you had a loss, it's like $15, like $20 tops.
Well, there's a reason for that. Don't be telling people it's a really good game.
No, but it's a relatively cheap game.
It's a bad game.
It's a relatively cheap game.
It's not a good game.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, and me and my friend Rado always disagree on this. I don't get the worry about this. Do you know how many 2-player games exist? Thousands. Then I don't know why I would worry. Now, this Gauntlet Love Letter, I wouldn't say it's a one versus many that just works well with 2. It's actually just a 2 to 4 player game or whatever. That's just how it is. It's not. It is 1 versus 2, 3, or 4, but it's it's still. I don't know. It just feels like a multiplayer game. But there are so many 2-player games out there that I don't know. I wouldn't. Not only is there so many good 2-player games, there's a ton of Euro games out there. Almost every heavy Euro game also plays well with 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what they're searching for is that similar, not that I'm saying this because they said the Thanos thing or whatever. They are looking for a hero villain kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. I see it. Maybe like a Dungeon Master.
Yeah, like that kind of thing, but not necessarily that theme all the time, And I was trying to think of games that were like that, and I'm just like, no, just play Unmatched, or just play, play games where you both have these cool abilities and you're just going at each other or something. I don't know. There's definitely even some of those right now that are like really interesting, that aren't just like, hey, we're fantasy warriors and shooting things at each other. Like,
well, if you all who are listening, if you think of something, this is a good use of the forums. Mention it in our Facebook group. Mention it. Tell us what we're missing.
Because, and it's all. This is what happens with those types of games. They had that experience, and they think that there's another game like it, and they will play they will go down a whole well of disappointment because they had a specific game that might have worked well for them at 2 players, like that type of game. And you don't want them to go down a well. It's like, just play a whole bunch of these cool 2-player games. Hopefully you have Jaipur in your collection. That's just a good 2-player game. Mr. Jack, Make sure you have these games first.
All right, our next question is from Lindsay, and she says, do you think in 30 years' time, retro board gaming will be a thing the same way that retro video gaming is now? And if so, what would it be about games of the last 10 to 20 years that will make people want to play them again? Just nostalgia or some defining aspect of board games in this era? And then she talked about Warhammer Quest and...
Tom, I'm going to be dead in 30 years.
Okay, first of all, we'll say 25 then.
I'll hang out.
You dark soul.
Said 25, I'll hang out.
First of all, I think retro gaming is cool and fun, but I also think it's not so much that it's retro. It's just, I don't go seek games that my dad, well, I mean, he didn't have much.
Yeah.
But my kids, I show them these retro games. They have no interest in them. We only have interest in them because it's nostalgic from our youth. And they are good. There's a lot of good games. Don't get me wrong. So, but with board games, there's nothing really retro about it. The really good games that have lasted, they're good games. You know, you put a good game from 20 years ago or 40 years ago, like Cosmic Encounter, it's still good now. Yes, there's some cheesy games, and yes, you might play them, but I don't know. I always feel like someone who plays an older game just because it's old, that's the very definition of a hipster.
That's really funny. You're name calling again, Tom.
I am name calling. I'm ornery today.
You are. You're testy. No, I do agree with you. So one of the things I'm working on right now, and we're doing a really bad job, so thank you. I'm finding games from back before I was like into gaming, which is like 2016. 15, 16, because I kind of had come back into the hobby by then. So I was trying to find the games that were, like they will say like, hey, 2011 was a great year. This and this year. I'm like, I just want to find out what these games were. Post Carcassonne, post, Catan, these types of games. And what I found is that just like all that matters is the game is fun and it will continue to be fun. That's why Monopoly is still fun for some people. I know that we become, elitists in some form. We have a different definition of fun because we've learned it by playing so many games, but like fun is just flat out fun. Like you said, El Grande, like that fun does not change for you. Like, yeah, it's not gorgeous. Yeah, it doesn't hit the same standard as far as what you would be visually attracted to sitting on a shelf if you have a game store. But it's still fun. And I think that's something I think that's going to be tested, like, hey, what's still fun, 10, 15 years from now? I think just like every other industry, we're going to be pushed forward. I don't know what that means, like what gets left behind, but because there's so many products. Board
games don't have technological differences as much though.
But they kind of are cannibalizing each other though. Like there's so many releases that it's like what stayed. We had a show about that. Like what's going to stay? Like we were just kind of like let's just predict. Like let's take games from the last 5 years and just say which games are going to stick. Like they're just going to stick. We think they are, like Azul. I think Azul is just going to stick.
I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say I'm not sure any game from 2020 is in that category.
I'm going to go with you are correct, sir.
The closest I could think is maybe Calico.
I was, that's the, it's funny. You read my mind. It's the only one I could think of. And it is like a kind of like, it has a chance. Interestingly enough, the more abstract, the more chance it has to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. We'll see. Like last year, I think there's 2. We got Wingspan for sure. We'll still be talking about that. And I think Marvel Champions, people will still be talking about that.
Yeah, I think Marvel Champions will be like the Arkham, the game that's just there. It'll be create its own community. It'll keep growing itself in some form. Conversation may move on, but people still have a full collection of it and are making geek bits and all kinds of stuff for it. So yeah, I think that'll stick.
All right. Well, we better jump to the next question because this guy asked 5.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, he is layered.
Let's just do one at a time.
I know. Let's just talk through it here. Talk me through it. This is Rafal, and he says, how would you define what a fun game is for you, and how do you respond to the people who criticize board games on iOS apps and say it's not for them? I'm part of a board game group where people are against board game apps. My usual response to them is, if a game is fun for me, it's for me. Doesn't matter what format.
Didn't he answer his own question here?
He did answer his own question, but I'm finding one A and one B in here. The first one is, well, how do you define fun? Like a fun game?
I don't. Do I feel fun? I'm done. It's fun. I don't have to define it.
It's fun. But I want to be clear on one thing. I feel like no matter how hard, like how heavy the game is, how light the game is, just remember it should not be hard to get to the fun part. Because the first rule of every game is to have fun. Like, it should not be hard to find the fun. And I can be very critical on a 30-minute game that I have to eventually get to the fun. I'm like, how could you not be fun like turn one in a 30-minute game? And I always say, even if it's a heavy game, you start to get like, oh, this is where the fun's going to come from. Okay, this is going to be cool. That's going to be cool. Now I see what we're building. But if that game doesn't give me that like right away, or I don't see it, it's trying to do a whole bunch of stuff at once, like Tawantin Suyu. I was a little worried. You know, that's where I start picking away at it. I'm like, I don't know. You're trying to do too much. Are we having fun here? So some games really make you question that, and that immediately should be a red flag for you. As far as board games with digital, that's always going to be divisive.
Oh, my word. Yeah. I don't understand it, though. Again, I don't want to get to the thing about why it's good. I just don't know why you care if someone else likes it.
It's just like with me with solo games. I just tell people, I'm like, why does it matter what kind of fun I have? Like, I love playing games with people more than I love playing solo. I know I create content that's solo based. So it's just, I get it. Like, I understand, but just understand me too. Like, we're just different people. You know, like, just understand me too. Like, I understand your point. Understand mine. Like, I'm having fun too. Don't you want me to have my own fun? You know, like, so yeah, no, that I don't know. Board gamers, it's interesting how we interact when we don't agree on things.
I think that's just humans in general.
Right. Yeah.
And that was only question one.
Yeah. That was, man, Tom, I don't know if we want to go through all these. Would you ever get rid of a physical board game when you have a very good equivalent as an iOS app? Now, I will tell you, I went backwards. I had played, Direwolf had sent me a code for Sagrada. And I was okay with the game when I played it, you know, back when it came out. And then I played the digital version, and then I found myself playing it like Candy Crush level. And I was like, I want the board game. So then I went and bought the board. So I went and got the board game and everything with it because they didn't have the expansions in the digital version. So I was like, I want all the expansions. Give them to me. So I ended up going the other way. But I don't see myself getting rid of a game and just saying, like, Spirit Island has a really good, you know, Gloom Haven has a really good representation on a board in video form. You know, Tainted Grail has a good one too. I'm not getting rid of those. It's a different experience.
Well, there's some, it depends on if I'm going to play it mostly solo or quickly. Mm-hmm. I think Ascension is better on the app.
Yeah.
And the one that really got me off guard is Mystic Veil. That was so much easier on the app than it was tucking all those cards in.
Tom, can I just say that I'm lying to you? Will you forgive me?
Sure. Your name's not Jeremy. Is this?
I'm lying. Root is so good digitally that I don't know when I'm going to pull out the physical version.
Well, I think we can all agree that the Root digital game is one of the best digital games ever made. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of
I
the
will
best
say,
digital
though,
games ever made.
It has made me hanker to want to play the board game in person if we ever get to play in person again.
Yes.
And at least now I know I'm playing the rules right.
That's the best part. They have some things like you can tell, like the people who are really good at it are like, no, this isn't doing this right or whatever, but they're working on that. They actually released the Clockwork expansion on there. So I'm going to go dive right back into it because I do want to learn the game and be better at the game. So yeah, once it becomes convention season and I know that I'm playing the game right, of course I'll sit down and play a game of Rubik with you, you know? But before I didn't want to be there, you know, sitting there with my deck. They're like, you don't even know how to play the marquee guy, man?
Alrighty. Man, these questions he has are like deep questions. All right, what's the next one?
Any tips for not getting burnt on your favorite games? Don't play them for a while.
Right. This is an easy one.
Look at the games to the left and the right and above them. I don't know.
Actually, his next question works right with that.
Oh, wow. Do you ever have days when you don't play board games? And what do you do then? Well, sir.
Nothing. I sit there and think about board games.
Right. I'll tell you right now, the first thing that my wife would love is if I would walk right past my board games and do the laundry. Okay? That's a start.
Okay, now let's not get crazy here.
That's a start. You know, play with my son. You know, I read. I consider reading rule books, not playing board games.
Okay. I was actually very impressed with your reading thing.
No, I do read. I have to read a lot for my job. So reading rule books is part of that, but I read a lot because of that. But yeah, I just do other stuff. Like we're building a Lego car, like a gigantic Lego car right now. Just doing stuff that keeps my mind active. Because board games are a different switch for me.
Right.
I don't play video games as much as I used to. I feel like I want to, but then I buy the games and don't playing them at all, or just forgetting I even have them. So I have a Switch I have a second Switch, Nintendo Switch, and I was going to play Animal Crossing on it. And then I realized how addicted I would be if I put that Animal Cross inside of the machine, and I haven't opened it. I'm looking at it right now. So yeah, I have to learn new hobbies, and now it's kind of restricted, but I have my different things that I do. Board games are set up on my table right now, and I don't even think about it. I could play it or not, I could play it or not. Don't have to do it all the time.
Well, there you go. That's his last question was then, do you ever take breaks on purpose from playing board games to get some rest?
Yeah.
I just kind of do it as is, right?
Yeah, I have to. There's a lot of really badly written 25 to 50 page rule books out there. Trust me. You got to take a break. You got to take a break, man. You got to take
All right. Our last controversial question is from Nathan. Nathan's brother is addicted to Marvel Strike Forces. This is an app that you can play on your phone or iPad or whatever.
My son
and he
just
says,
got talking to me about this.
He said he had his brother and a few other people over for Twilight Imperium. And it was the same weekend where Strike Force is doing some blitz thing to unlock a new character.
Yeah.
So his brother is half playing Twilight Imperium and half playing on his phone, which tends to irritate everyone else at the rest of the table. So he was annoyed by that. And he says from now on, he wants to make sure if he invites people over for a game, it has to be a cell phone free game. And folks, don't get excited that you can still text or call people. He's talking about using it as something other than a communication device. Have you ever to talk to someone about this problem before, says Nathan, and what are some good ways to talk to people whose attention is split because of a game on their phone?
For me, well, I'm not that person that's doing that. I'm a person that's taking pictures a lot for social media while we're playing. And, my friends, they were like, dude, what, do you do that? I was like, that's what I do. Like, that's how I have to do, make content and stuff. I told them, I'm not going to be playing games and stuff like that, or, I just don't feel like that's respectful. But just like when anybody breaks unwritten rules that you haven't told them yet, or they just generally do, I always just make sure I communicate that with them, the next day, personally. You can do it through message, text, or just call them. Say, hey, man, thanks for coming last night. And then lead into it and just say, hey, there was people who are kind of irritated by, you using the phone. And I was kind of letting, it was just kind of messing up the vibe. And we want to make sure that everybody's staying engaged because, TI is a big, big thing. It's a whole day thing. You just got to lay the land and say, hey, man, I just don't want people to be irritated by it. And then they'll start bothering you. So I'd rather just talk to you about it now. And that should be done. I feel like it's the same communication you would have, during a game of TI4. So,
it is straight up an addiction, no.
It is.
It is an addiction because the people who do it will justify it any way they want. They'll say, I can't concentrate on just the game. Mm-hmm. And that's simply not true.
Yeah.
You can, but people have conditioned themselves. I do it. If I'm standing in line at the grocery store, I'm on my phone, probably. If I'm sitting in the car waiting for someone, I'm on the phone. If it's boring when I'm doing a podcast with someone who's new and they're not looking at me, I'm on my phone. I'm not. I don't know where my phone is.
I see, Tom.
No, you. I should have pulled it out and did that when I was talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not always just games. It's Facebook or sometimes it's texting. I get when your spouse tells you, hey, I need you to do something or something. But when you are having a really long conversation with someone on text and it's pretty much nothing, you are telling the people that you're with they are less important to you than what you're doing. And that game doesn't deserve your full attention. And if you do that to me and I talk to you about it and you still do it, I don't invite you anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly what I tell people. Like if people are breaking unwritten rules and I didn't tell them, that's fine. I'll let them know. And if that's just a thing that they do, I'll tell them like you cannot do that. And then after that, you got to go. But like people who get angry at games, people who are like sore losers, I'm like, if you don't call me tomorrow and apologize or whatever, you ain't coming back. You're not coming back. I don't have time for that. I had my game night. You're not messing with the vibe. I'm not doing that. And I can do that in the most gentle way, and we can move forward with our lives. I don't really tolerate that. But like what he's saying is, it is annoying to you. I understand that. So you definitely need to make sure you communicate that to them. And you should wait till the next day. Don't wait like where it's awkward at the end of the night. Like, hey, I need to talk to you like a teacher. Like, hey guys, you guys have a great day. Tom, I need to talk to you after class.
Oh, sure. What's up?
What's up? First of all, could you put that copy of Mariposas down? I'm not going to let you borrow it. You had a violation today here at our game night, and you're suspended from the borrowing program until next week.
What is going on? All right. That is our questions, folks. Let's get to my favorite part, the top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
All right, hybrid games. People ask, what does hybrid mean? When I first got into the hobby, hybrid, we called them Waros or whatever, which was a mix of a war game and a Euro.
Okay.
And then as time went by, that definition that makes sense. There's just all kinds of mixtures. There's games that are party deduction. There's games that are, a war game / economic game. So this is real loose. In fact, me and Jeremy pretty much didn't talk about this at all, so that's why his list is going to be so bad. Yeah, but
I see your list. You're really sticking to the guns there. You really have some not so good games on there too. Anyway, this is fun. This is gonna be fun.
We have one crossover, so you got to admit that game's good.
That game's great. Yeah, that game's great.
I'm not beating up on the games in your. Well, I will actually. So let's get started.
Yeah, you were very aggressive, so I'm going to go ahead and resist.
All right. Here we go.
Number 10.
And by the way, I'm just going to preface this. Like, I kind of mixed in the little recency just so people can know some things that are out there.
Cult of the New.
I know, Cult of the New. All right, anyway, I don't know why I just sang that. So Sorcerer City is a game by Scott Caputo, which I just said, tile laying goat. Guy's awesome. In this game, you are building cities. What you're basically doing is taking tiles that match colors, trying to match up the colors in specific kind of forms to create this scoring pattern. So you can have scoring patterns each round. And what you're doing is also fighting off monsters that will be added to your deck of tiles. You'll also be purchasing them from a market. Different types of tiles that have different scoring conditions from the market. And what you'll do is build a deck of tiles. But they are to be different rules because you'll have the evil ones come out that have different things each time. But the trick to this one is that not only is it tile laying, not only is it deck tile building, it also is a real-time game. So you're trying to do all of this in under 1, 2, or 3 minutes, depending on how awesome you are. You can have that happen, and it gets harder and harder, and it takes more and more of your table space, but it's really fun, and it definitely get you a little nerd sweat when you get all tensed up trying to get all those tiles out at the end. It's tough. I love that game. It's a blender of stuff. I just really was blown away by that game. It kind of came out of nowhere for me. And I just like games like that have a lot of tension, but it's definitely it's a little this and that, and a little unpredictable. I liked it. All
right. My number 10 is from Tabula Games, and this is pretty much the only kind of game they make are hybrid games, and that's Miss Thea. They just came out this year with Ikeon, and I like Ikeon too, but I think I like Miss Thea better. When you first see Miss Thea, you're like, ooh, it's a miniature game. Yeah, but it's also a game where you fight giant monsters, but it's also very Euro-y.
Okay.
You're just moving around and dropping these dudes off, and you're fighting a little bit. You're also fighting a monster and playing cards that let you take different actions. It's a pretty solid system with some really funky miniatures. I don't know what's going on. It's some weird... Some people have really weird dreams. That's all I can think of. But I like the combo. It's a little like Blood Rage, which was a game I considered putting on this list. But I just think this one fits that mix of Euro game and Ameritrash, the combination. So that's Miss Thea, my number 10.
Number 9.
This game we just talked about earlier today was Whistle Mountain. Now, we just talked about the overview of the game. You are building this engine of on your player board. You have like a kind of an engine building thing going on where you're buying these machines, but ultimately you're trying to place these scaffolding tiles in certain patterns to score points as you place them. You're trying to make a kind of a pattern where you can possibly get in and grab as many resources as possible and trigger buildings. You're trying to score off your workers. But what it basically is a combination of this engine building thing and tile placement, kind of Tetris-y video game type thing. And then I realized when I was saying that and I sent the list to you today, I'm like, boy, I'm reaching, Tom. Can you help me?
No, I was going to say this game, I love it, but it's straight up Euro. I don't know what you're talking about. What's it?
It's straight up Euro.
Okay.
You're supposed
to be defending yourself. All right.
Tom, I'm sorry.
All right,
I dropped the ball.
Let's jump to one that is, I think, one of the more prominent ones in this genre, and that's Dominant Species. Dominant Species is straight up crush your opponents, take their species. You're all running, whatever you pick, spiders, birds, primates, and just evolve and control everything. And it's mixed with worker placement. It's worker placement and then just trashing your opponents on the board. Yeah. It's also a pretty long game, and it still has some very strong fans. If you go to a convention, you're likely going to find people playing this.
Tom, what does it mix with? Bashing your opponents?
It's Ameritrash mixed with worker placement.
Oh, okay.
If I say bashing your opponents, what do you think that means?
I'm just saying, mixed with what?
All right. Ameritrash.
It's a bash your opponents game. Okay.
And worker placement. All right. Come on, have some more backup for your next one.
Number 8.
Oh my gosh. Crisis is really, really interesting. So Crisis is a worker placement game and kind of an economic game. You're in this kind of futuristic society. It's called a company called Axiom, and players are competitively and at times cooperatively trying to create this economy in the game. And what's interesting about this game is, I think it's 7 rounds. You can actually not finish the game because the economy fails. Because each round you have to hit like a certain threshold, and whoever is past the threshold, great. But whoever's under it actually brings that score down, and it takes your whole game economy down. So you could actually just lose the game, count up what points are there, which won't be many, and then that's it. So it's actually a really interesting play on sort of cooperative, but then also competitive. And I don't really think of any game that's like that. I don't know any game that's like that. So, yeah, that's why it's in my collection. It's a forever stay. That is Christ.
This is actually one I don't know. I have not played this one.
It's really good. It's really good.
All right, my number 8 is an amazing game. Kemet. Kemet is amazing. Kemet is a mix of the, your troops on a map style game mixed with Civilization because you have all these techs that you can build. I am really pumped about the second 2.0 version of Kemet coming out later this year. And folks who got mad about Cthulhu, I'm glad Cthulhu's in it. I'm not even a Cthulhu fan. I just think that's cool. But anyhow, I love this game because you just pick the text that you do. Everything's different. There's a worker placement. And yet at the same time, I get to take a giant elephant into battle. That's just so... I'm always disappointed when a game has monsters and they kind of just sit there. Here you have those monsters and you're putting a lasso over them and you are riding them into battle.
Yeah.
It just feels good.
I know. There's nothing worse than having something like big. They give you a big mini and it just sits there. You're like, what is this? Right. What is this?
It's like, why did you give me this monster if it's just going to sit there and glare at us the whole time?
You get all judgy. You didn't even paint it.
No, I'm not that judgy. All right. My number 8, an amazing game, Kemet.
Number 7.
My next game is a Feast for Odin. Feast for Odin basically is a combination of worker placement and tile placement in a sense. So you're trying to take these, you basically have this gigantic board that you are placing your workers out on, and you're trying to get a combination of things that will give you bigger pieces in the right size to fit, and you're putting them on these islands to kind of build into the pattern to cover as many negative numbers as possible. This game is not like world breaking, but it was awesome, super ridiculously awesome for its time. And the game just holds up. And I put it on this list where it is because I just feel like it is one of those top 10 hybrid games to me. Like overall, just like no question. What a game. It just seems like there's too much. But as you get, you get used to how the game plays out. I mean, after you do the setup about 15 million times and you learn how to do it a little bit faster, you really have a very solid game. Covering those islands up is just fun in itself. But yeah, Feast for Odin.
All right. My next one's a very obvious mix here. That's Catacombs. This is a mix of dexterity, flicking, and a dungeon crawl. And it's done so well. It sounds like it shouldn't work. I'm flicking my barbarian to go attack the goblins. Yes, you are. Yes, it works. Yes, it's fun. I love it. That's all I have to say. Dexterity plus dungeon crawl equals Catacombs.
Number 6.
My next one, it's a little dicey, Tom.
No, there's no dice in the game. First error.
It's a little dicey, Tom. It's unmatched, okay? Feel me on this.
I'm listening. I'm waiting.
They're cards.
Come on now.
Wait, Tom. No, okay. There's dudes on the map. Okay? Dudes on the map. And it's a card game with asymmetrical decks. And the interesting part about this game is that literally, like the games, every character is mechanically completely different. The way you attack and the way your movement around is just, it's completely different. Like, yeah, that's pretty much a +2, +3 movement type game. But then like the actual actions and the things you can steal from other people's deck, how you sync things up, it doesn't have, you wouldn't say like there's one guy who's a tile layer. There's not, you wouldn't say anything like that. But you definitely would say, hey, like the Invisible Man literally like can go invisible and put out little tiles that they can appear and disappear in. You have different things that like have these different positioning mechanics and stuff like that. For some reason, I decided to put this on this list because there's so many different characters that make all these maps play out so different. And I was like, I guess that's a hybrid as well. I don't know. It was late when I made this list. Get off my
I'm
back.
not even getting on your back. You're okay. Good Good choice. All right. My number 6
Thank you, Tom.
is one of the weirdest hybrids on the list, and I think most people won't like it, but I like it. And that's For the Crown. Have you heard of this game?
Never played this game.
You've played this?
No, never.
All right. This is a mix between deck building and chess.
Oh my god,
That sounds what? Good or horrifying?
that sounds great.
It's really good. Now, the component quality is not great. This was made by Victory Point Games back in the days of them making just really not. I don't know if you ever played their games. They have dust on them when you open the game up. So in this game, you have these
Shots
cards.
fired.
Well, no. It's not good. It's not. This is the truth. But in this game, you have a deck of cards, and you start with a few pieces on the board. And when you have a card, you can discard it to put that piece in the game, or you can use it as the special ability on the card. So that's kind of a tricky thing. The more pieces you get on the board, but it's really thinky. Like you're sitting there going, do I want to add another knight? And you could have 3 knights, or whatever if you play enough of these cards. Or do I want to do this card that lets me move this piece twice? And that makes it sound a little chaotic, but it's really good. In fact, season 2 of Queen's Gambit is about this game. No, it's not. But that'd be great if it was. But For the Crown, great hybrid of chess and deck building.
This sounds very interesting, by the way. So I read this. Had you ever play a game called Archon?
How do you spell it?
Do you remember that computer game, Archon? Like Archon, O-N, Archon. It was like a game or battle chess.
Oh, you mean as a video game? Oh, I played Battle Chess. Battle Chess drove me nuts because I didn't care if I won or not. My goal was to try to get a piece to take another piece so I could see the animation for that kill. Like, I'm like, all right, I still haven't seen a pawn take out the queen yet. How can we set it up so that happens?
Yeah, I think that's why I think I fell in love with like Fire Emblem and like Advanced War Tactics. But I always just remember the beginning of that all was when the Archon came out, Battle Chess and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It just made me think of that, but of course not the same.
Number 5.
All right, my number 5 is a game called Renegade by the Dusty publisher, Victory Points Games.
Yeah, but this one's from 2018. I'm telling you, they had a big change in their component quality.
That is very true because Nemo's War is off the charts too. So Renegade is a weird deck building, pick up and deliver, mission completion. It's all kinds of different mechanisms in this game. You are deckers. If you don't know what deckers is, we're talking like futuristic type game, and you are these deckers that are wiring into this network, taking out these computers, these rogue computers that are in there. They're an AI deck, and what the computers do is they set up different things on these big 6-spot hexes that are around, and they're different colors. And your job as the characters is to use your cards to like get to the spots you need to. So you're playing cards to warp to another part of the board. You're, picking up one piece that they have to throw it to another part that destroys a virus. You're doing all these different types of things. You're also kind of controlling a market by buying cards and sharing cards. There's a whole bunch of different stuff going on in this game. It's a really interesting game. I feel like it has, just because of the way the machines are programmed, it has different ways to win and different mechanisms that go based on that machine. So it is, when I put out a list, when I put out a kind of like a message to say, hey, like, what are some great hybrid games? It was like the one that I was like, wow, there's so many different mechanisms in this game, and it's based on the machines. That's Renegade. And it is designed by Ricky Royal, which is one of the best solo content creators. This was his one design, his one own design. And wow, is it good? It's also a mess. It's also a mess of a rule book. But But it's a really great game. It's one of my favorite games, and that is Renegade by Victory Points Games.
I don't know if I like how it looks. It just looks like a bunch of color on the table.
You know what? It's not pretty. And it could have used like way more sheen to it. But what you're playing, it's abstract. It's really abstract. What you're playing is really, it's a really smart design. Those AI decks that you're playing against the machines just really thematically, like there's one that's like a spider that kind of spreads out its legs to different parts of the board, and you got to kind of like, it's just, I couldn't explain all different machines, but they have different like stages to them too, and you have to kind of defeat them before the stages are complete. Otherwise, they continue to spread more and more different viruses across there. And the way you work with your teammates, if you're playing, like you're playing two-handed, you kind of have to work off the weaknesses of your other characters, and then also buy cards from the market that will help you kind of make up for your weaknesses. And it's a really good game. It's a very, very good game.
All righty. Well, there you go. Renegade. My number 5 is Dungeon Twister, which I'm still expecting. I have no basis for this. I'm just assuming it will happen. A reprint of this. It's got to be coming soon.
Okay.
Dungeon Twister is a mix of like a chess style game mixed with card combat. In this, you have 8 characters that have been thrown into this dungeon by some crazy magician, and they have to get to the other side of the dungeon or knock out the other people. Take them out. You get a point for each one that you do that to. First person to get 5 points wins. Very simple. But each character has special abilities. There's almost no luck in the game at all other than initial setup. Okay. It's really well done, and I'm waiting for the reprint of it because it's such a cool game.
Look at you. You're willing to get it to existence. You're speaking to existence.
Nah, it's Vassal's Law. It's going to happen. You know it is.
Law. All right.
So that is Dungeon Twister.
Number 4.
My next one here is Spirit Island. Spirit Island is a very, very popular cooperative game. It is a very difficult game. It's an asymmetrical game where you play as spirits trying to fight against these evil kind of invaders that are spreading about, and they're building cities. They're bringing their warriors. They're taking the land away from the Duhani. And you are working together to spread your influence up on the board. So your influence is kind of represented by these little stumps that are on there. And you're spreading them around to kind of pull off some of your abilities. But meanwhile, you're building a deck of cards that are regular cards, and then also these super powerful cards. And it's just a really, really strong combination of this area dominance and deck building. And each one of those decks that you get, like when you start getting your powerful cards, it's like, hold up. Are you ready? Are you ready for this turn? That's why this game is higher on the list. It's one of my favorite games of all time. That is Spirit Island.
All righty. My number 4 just had a new version released from WizKids, which looks fantastic, and that's Cediro Confluence, because the first edition looked super boring. This is a mix of negotiation and engine building. It doesn't sound like it should work. If I said, hey, we're going to play a 7-player, 3-hour game where you're building an engine, you can't use your own cards. Most of the time you have to use other people's cards and convince them everyone has an asymmetrical power, and you're basically changing cubes and other cubes, you might say pass, but for some reason, the sum of this game is more than the parts. I really like it. And now it looks pretty.
It is an experience. It's definitely an experience.
It really is, but it's not one I want to have all the time just because of the length.
But it is definitely an experience. Like, it's so me. I just like negotiation right away. Let's go. So, yeah, that's a really good one.
Number 3.
My number 3 is a very small game from a tiny publisher. It is called Gloom Haven. Technically, yes, it was from a small publisher. So,
well, that's true.
Technically, yes, because it was the first Kickstarter was one guy. He changed that real quick. He needed a staff. So, yeah, Gloom Haven is, of course, I would say, like, this is probably the gold standard for this list. Probably it's probably further up your list, but it's hybrid. It's a card. It's a Euro card game. It's a Euro dungeon crawler. There are different games that do stuff like this, but this was like kind of the big one. Like this is the one that says, hey, if you like a dungeon crawler, well, I don't like dungeon crawlers. Well, what if I told you it's like a Euro game? You really are, you're really actually playing these cards to do this first position, and you have to figure out your hand management system for each character. And like, it was, a home run, says BGG #1, there's proof. And Frosthaven is even more proof that this is a thing. So that is Gloom Haven, my second favorite game of all time, by the way.
Interesting. All right. My number 3 is Champions of Midgard. Champions of Midgard is a worker placement game mixed with dice chucking. It's a good worker placement game, but then you also get to fight ogres and other giant monsters. I really like it, especially with the expansions. But I like chucking dice anyhow. But I also like worker placement, and there's very few games that combine the two well. And that's why it's number 3 on my list, Champions of Midgard.
Hey, Tom, is Champions of Midgard an adventure game?
Yeah, it is. I think so, because you travel on boats and you fight leviathans and you roll dice to beat those leviathans. It's amazing.
I won't forget that moment. You tried to sell us on that one.
Well, maybe it's true.
All right, party people, never forget. Never forget. Champions of Midgard is an adventure game. All right.
Number 2.
Number 2 is Chronicles of Crime. And really, it's just the fact that this is a board game and an app. And the thing is that this game, you almost sell it. And I should say this, it's a board game, it's app, and it's virtual reality. So you have several different things that are being added to the board games industry all at once. But of course, there's been board games with apps, but this one has it's got the QR scanning. It's got you're putting your phone up, looking around the room, which is something I haven't seen in a board game before. And then you even have the VR version of it. So it's a really interesting interactive type game. I've seen people say, well, it should just all be app. I'm like, no, that'd be kind of strange, but I guess you could. I mean, it probably could be like a Professor Layton or whatever, but
right.
Yeah, it could probably just be a Professor Layton. But of course, now you're just deciding you don't want to play a board game now. But yeah, it's like, okay, guy, I understand you don't want to play a board game. Chronicles of Crime, one of my favorite games of all time.
Indeed, it is good.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. My number 2 is Twilight Struggle. Now, Twilight Struggle is looked at by wargamers as a good example of a war game. It's looked at as Eurogamers as a good example of a area control game. Yep. Therefore, it must be some of each. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a good combination. And man, I just played the app for this, and it was fantastic.
You know what? I'm going to make sure I get on that ASAP. I forgot. There's an app. Tom, I've never played this game before. I've never played the game before. And I remember when I heard that, I said, I need to get the app so I can at least play it, right? I can play against an AI and at least figure out what all the hype is about. That's not true, but you know how people say that? Like a game that came out 10 years ago. I don't know what all the hype's about. The hype is gone. It's solidified, buddy. It's solidified.
Well, definitely check it out. That is Twilight Struggle.
And finally, number 1.
I don't see what all the hype is about my number 1 game, Mage Knight. So, Mage Knight, a.k.a. the greatest game of all time, is a game of pretty much a blend of a lot of things. It's a dudes on the map type game. It is competitive. It can be played solo. It is an adventure game. It's a resource management game. It's also deck building. You kind of are creating your own story. So in this game, you are a mage knight. You are creative. You're a powerful warrior. Got this console, and you're going off on this quest, and they have tiles that are your mission. Really, your ending is at the bottom of these tiles. So there's the discovery of going on these tiles, like a dudes on the map thing. You're revealing it as you go. Think Zelda-like. You're going, you go to different spots. You can go fight, and you actually get some choice of how you want your fame to go up. And as your fame goes up, you add these cards to your deck. So you're actually kind of RPGing your character as you go along, because those cards are, you're there. So you're building these decks. And then when you get to certain spots, if you have your what is it? Not fame. It's not your fame, but it's something else, where you kind of have the faith of the people, and then you get to recruit folks. So there's that as well. But so there's just a lot of these little different elements in there, and how you like do this little hand management stuff. It's got a lot of things going on, and that's why it's great. It's great at all of them, except for the rule book. Mage Knight.
Can't complain about Mage Knight, and I'm already kind of, well, Jeremy already said Gloom Haven for number 3, but it's the truth of it. People say, what does Gloom Haven have that other dungeon crawls don't? And the answer is good rules. Now, that's not quite true, but there is now a dungeon crawl on Kickstarter consistently. I challenge you to find a day in 2020 that there was not a dungeon crawler on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I don't even know how people are going to play all these. There's so many of them.
So many.
And some of them are quite fun, and some of them get sent back and get sold because the person who's playing them has buyer's regret.
Yep.
But Gloomhaven stood out from the rest because the mechanisms of the card play in it are different. Yes, it still has that dungeon feel to it, which is why it's on this list. But man, Eurogamers played Gloomhaven when they would play nothing else. Yeah.
I totally agree. And I've even seen dungeon crawler people not as turned on by it because it's too Euro-y. So you got both. It is truly a hybrid. People are like, I just want to chug dice. like, I don't want to math out my hand. I want to chug dice and roll and hit for, combos and stuff like that. So you have on both sides, they'll let you know it's kind of a true split, of the type of game it is. It is the true hybrid, without trying to do everything. It's Gloomhaven.
All righty. So let's look at what the people choice said. Number 20, Everdell. I guess it feels like straight worker placement, but whatever.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah.
19, Mage Knight. Hey, people agree with you.
Yeah.
18, Black Fleet. No, folks, that's just. No. Well, I guess maybe they're saying because it's both pickup and delivery and Ameritrash.
Yeah. Okay. Pass.
The next one I don't get at all. 17 is Harry Potter deck building.
Yeah. No, we're moving.
It's a deck building game.
And it is just a deck builder game.
16, Robinson Crusoe mixes adventure and Euro game mechanisms, worker placement. 15, Seventh Continent. It's an adventure game. I'm not sure. Oh, who knows? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. 14, Francis Drake. This is a hybrid, I guess, in that it's two halves of a game put together.
Yeah, I wouldn't know on that one.
13, Feast for Odin. This is why I didn't give you garbage on this, because the people agreed with you. 12, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth. I guess they're saying you mix an iPad with the game.
Yeah, well, no. You're funny. Game plus iPad.
Hybrid.
Okay, hybrid.
All right, 11. This is a good one, actually, is Eclipse. That's a good hybrid. It's half economic and half spaceship battles.
Okay.
10, Galaxy Trucker. This is just tile laying. It's fast tile laying.
Well, there you go.
I don't know. 9, Champions of Midgard, validating me. Also, everyone who voted for this said it's a great adventure game.
No, don't you dare.
That's fact.
Don't you dare.
Number 8, Kemet. Number 7, Spirit Island. People are agreeing with both of us. 6, Rising Sun. 5, Root. 4.
I guess, yeah, okay, I get it.
Well, Root is like a mixture of like a war game.
Yeah,
and deck building and a Euro game. There's all kinds of stuff in there.
There's all kinds.
4, Near and Far. That's a mixture of like, I think a Euro game and a storytelling game.
Yeah, and a storytelling. Yeah.
3, Blood Rage. I don't know. Blood Rage feels like straight up Ameritrash to me, but whatever. Yeah. 2, Cyclades. That's definitely has European auction style in it, and then fighting.
Yeah.
And then Scythe. Folks, Scythe was number one. I considered Scythe, but I just think it's a Euro game.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit of combat in it, but man, it just feels like a straight Euro game. I like it.
Straight Euro game.
So,
yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And it really, like I was saying, it really just doesn't want to do anything else either. It's like they don't want to fight. They really don't want you to fight in the game. It's not exciting. Anyway.
Well, that, folks, is that. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming on and saving me from talking to the microphone by myself.
Oh, man, I would have done it better than you. But, hey, thank you so much for having me on today, sir.
You would have been better solo than me.
Hey, I do that well, sir. I do that very well. But I'm just I'm just shooting shots at you, man. I miss you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, well, you were the last person in the studio. We were all, he came down to do a top 10 with us, and then we're all standing there listening to the government talking about how they're probably going to shut down the country. We're like, you better get home, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was like, I got to get out of here.
And he got home, and he stayed there.
Yeah, stayed there.
So that was the last time. But hey, I have hope for 2021. I do. So that's good, and there you go. Thanks, everybody, for sending in and watching and listening to our show. So until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Jeremy Howard.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 685, was recorded on November 19th, 2020. I should be assembled enough to join Mandy and Suzanne for a show next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I voraciously visualize our top 10 games that start with the letter V. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Jeff Rademacher, Roy Canaday, Mike DeLisio, and Rob Seary. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. The only game I can think about right now is what I'm surrounded by: Container. And you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at tom@Dicetower.com or eric@Dicetower.com. Or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Games Insider, Out of Game, The Broken Meeple, The Game Pit, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The D6 Generation, Ludology, and Board Game Breakfast at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.